September 2021. A team of spelunkers ventures into the forgotten mining tunnels scattered across northern Arizona's wilderness. These underground expeditions have become their weekend ritual, their passion. They squeeze through yet another entrance to a shaft that time has erased from memory. The atmosphere below ground feels oppressive, thick with the scent of moisture and ancient earth. A headlamp's glow suddenly illuminates something peculiar against the cavern wall. Not mining debris or abandoned tools. 2 sleeping bags, positioned parallel to each other, compressed tight. What makes the discovery truly horrifying is the crude hand-stitching sealing them shut with heavy cord. The spelunkers immediately contact authorities. When the sealed bags are cut open, decomposed human remains emerge. Forensic analysis confirms the identities: Marcus Thompson and Sarah Chen, who vanished without explanation 11 years prior. This grim discovery didn't solve their case. Instead, it deepened the enigma. The tale of their vanishing and ultimate fate weaves together baffling evidence, dead-end investigations, and an absence of any reasonable explanation. To comprehend these events, we must return to July 2010. 28-year-old Marcus Thompson and 25-year-old Sarah Chen represented an ordinary young couple. Their relationship had flourished for nearly 3 years. They shared an apartment in Tucson, and adventure called to them regularly. Marcus earned his living as a software developer, while Sarah worked as a physical therapist. Neither pursued extreme outdoor activities or dangerous wilderness challenges. They simply craved escaping into nature's embrace, setting up camp, and watching constellations emerge. That July, they organized a brief journey through Arizona's northern territories. Their itinerary remained simple: drive northward, experience the Grand Canyon's majesty, then return home while discovering worthwhile stops throughout their route. They gathered essential supplies: shelter, bedding, portable cooking equipment, provisions, and hydration. A digital camera accompanied them for capturing memories. For this pair, it represented another intimate escape from city life. They departed Tucson on Thursday morning in Marcus's vehicle, a blue Honda Civic in excellent mechanical condition that had recently cleared all safety inspections. Neither expressed any worries or ominous feelings to family or friends. Quite the opposite. According to those close to them, both seemed excited and eager for their upcoming adventure. Their final confirmed sighting occurred on Friday, July 15th. They purchased fuel at a service station near Grand Canyon National Park's Northern Gateway. The attendant would later describe them as any typical young tourists. They bought gasoline, bottled water, and trail mix. Marcus handled the driving while Sarah studied their route map. They maintained friendly but brief interactions and appeared relaxed. The clerk observed no suspicious vehicles trailing them or anyone showing unusual interest in the couple. After refueling, they continued eastward along Route 64. That marked their last verified location. Then, complete silence. Sarah maintained a standing tradition of telephoning her father every Sunday night following any trip. That call never happened. Initially, her father remained unconcerned. Perhaps they encountered delays. Maybe cellular coverage proved unreliable. Such situations had occurred previously. However, when neither appeared at their respective jobs Monday morning, alarm bells sounded. Marcus and Sarah's employers raised immediate concerns. Attempts to reach their mobile phones resulted in voicemail responses. Family members contacted every medical facility and law enforcement agency along their probable travel path. No information surfaced. No accidents or incidents involving a couple or vehicle matching their description. By Monday evening, More than 24 hours past their expected return, both families submitted official missing persons reports. Law enforcement initiated standard protocols. Court orders enabled tracking of their cellular devices and financial accounts. Both phones had powered down since Friday. The final signal originated near their last confirmed location at the service station. Their credit cards remained unused since the gasoline purchase. This pattern suggested serious trouble. Individuals who simply become lost or decide to extend vacations typically continue using communication devices and accessing funds. Search operations commenced immediately. Officers and civilian volunteers systematically covered areas surrounding Route 64. Aircraft provided aerial reconnaissance. Northern Arizona encompasses enormous territory: forests, canyon systems, and desert landscapes. Locating anything in such vastness resembled finding the proverbial needle in a haystack. The search continued for over a week without producing results. No vehicle, no evidence. Marcus and Sarah appeared to have evaporated completely. 8 days after their disappearance, on July 23rd, a National Forest Ranger discovered their Honda. The vehicle sat parked beside an overgrown access road to defunct logging operations, roughly 40 miles east of their last known position. This route penetrated deep forest areas and remained nearly invisible from major highways. The car appeared secure and undamaged. No broken glass or forced entry signs were evident. When crime scene technicians accessed the interior, the puzzles multiplied exponentially. Everything remained in perfect order. Their camping tent, dual sleeping bags, and clothing-filled backpacks occupied the rear seats. The glove compartment contained Marcus and Sarah's identification documents, wallets holding cash and credit cards. An unfolded map and partially consumed trail mix sat on the front passenger seat. The ignition keys lay on the driver's seat. Absolutely no evidence of violence existed. No bloodstains, torn fabric, or traces indicating other individuals' presence. The scene suggested Marcus and Sarah had simply stopped, exited their vehicle, and walked away, abandoning all possessions. This scenario defied logic completely. Why abandon transportation along with keys, identification, and money? If they intended a brief walk, why not take water bottles or communication devices? Police thoroughly examined the surrounding area. Tracking dogs detected scent trails extending several hundred yards before losing the trail on rocky terrain where further tracking became impossible. Investigators found only Marcus and Sarah's boot impressions leading away from the vehicle. No evidence of additional vehicles that might have approached and removed them forcibly appeared. Forensic specialists processed the Honda for fingerprint evidence. They discovered only Marcus and Sarah's prints. Nothing else. The theory of accidental wandering was quickly dismissed. They had left all survival necessities in their car. The voluntary disappearance hypothesis also crumbled under scrutiny. Why abandon financial resources and identification documents? The scene resembled suicide preparation, but then why drive such distances and abandon the vehicle in this manner? The primary theory focused on abduction, yet this didn't align with available evidence either. The complete absence of struggle signs in and around the Honda baffled investigators. If an attack had occurred, it must have happened elsewhere. Perhaps they had stopped to assist someone on the roadway, or individuals impersonating law enforcement had stopped them. Investigators pursued this angle vigorously. They interviewed everyone who might have traveled Route 64 that day. They examined surveillance recordings from every service station and business within a 100-mile radius. The task proved monumentally challenging. Several witnesses reported seeing similar blue sedans that day, but none recalled anything suspicious. Nobody observed anyone following them or saw them stopping to interact with strangers. The investigation reached an impasse. Searching continued for additional weeks, producing no breakthroughs. The forest maintained its silence. Volunteers and officers scoured hundreds of square miles, investigating abandoned structures, old cabins, and descending into shallow canyons. Nothing emerged. Eventually, active searching ceased. Marcus Thompson and Sarah Chen's case joined the cold case files. Photographs of the smiling couple appeared in police stations and on community bulletin boards. Their families maintained hope and vigilance. However, with each passing year, optimism gradually faded. For 11 years, the case remained dormant. No fresh evidence, no new witnesses, just emptiness, a complete information void. It seemed the earth itself had consumed them entirely. As later events would reveal, in some sense, that assessment proved accurate. Years elapsed. Marcus and Sarah's case collected dust in storage. Periodically, a new detective assigned to cold cases would review the file, invariably reaching identical conclusions. Nothing existed to pursue. Not a single investigative thread remained. The evidence absence seemed almost supernatural. In our digital age, where every action leaves traces, Marcus and Sarah had vanished without leaving footprints. Their story became popular discussion material on internet forums devoted to unsolved mysteries. Amateur investigators worldwide developed theories, each more elaborate than the last. Some suggested they had encountered a serial killer who hunted highway travelers. Others believed they had accidentally discovered an illegal drug operation in the wilderness and were eliminated as unwanted witnesses. Police investigated these theories systematically. They compared the case to similar disappearances nationally. No matches emerged. They examined Marcus and Sarah for any possible criminal connections. Nothing surfaced. They were completely ordinary individuals. The most popular theory among online investigators suggested the couple had encountered someone living as a forest hermit. Perhaps a military veteran suffering from trauma, or simply an antisocial individual who preferred isolation. According to this scenario, Marcus and Sarah accidentally trespassed on his territory. He might have forced them to accompany him at gunpoint. This would explain why they abandoned their car without struggle signs. He could have held them temporarily before killing them. This theory seemed reasonable, but remained unprovable. Northern Arizona's forests are vast, and locating someone avoiding detection proves virtually impossible. Marcus and Sarah's families never surrendered hope. They granted interviews, employed private investigators, and maintained a website dedicated to finding the missing couple. However, time continued its march and hope dimmed. The case became local folklore, a terrifying story about a couple consumed by the wilderness. Then, in September 2021, that legend transformed into shocking reality. Everything began with 3 amateur cave explorers. They were seasoned adventurers who spent weekends investigating old abandoned mines dotting the region. Many of these excavations dated to 19th century gold rushes. They appeared on no official maps, and their entrances often remained blocked or concealed by vegetation. On this particular day, they stumbled upon such a mine. The entrance was almost completely obstructed by fallen rocks and overgrown with brush. Clearly, nobody had visited this location for decades. With considerable effort, they cleared the debris and revealed a vertical shaft descending into darkness. They estimated the depth at approximately 90 feet or 27 meters. It represented a dangerous but intriguing discovery. They secured rappelling ropes and began their descent. The most experienced team member went first. The air felt suffocating and reeked of damp soil and decay. His headlamp beams swept across the shaft's irregular walls covered with mineral formations. Upon reaching the bottom, the explorer surveyed his surroundings. The shaft floor was littered with debris and collapsed stone. He directed his flashlight toward the far corner and froze completely. There, positioned against the wall, were two elongated objects. Initially, he assumed they were garbage bags abandoned years ago, but approaching closer, an ominous feeling overwhelmed him. They were two deteriorated. The laboratory confirmed their worst fears. When the bags were opened, skeletal human remains were discovered inside. After comparing dental records, experts identified them with absolute certainty. It was Marcus and Sarah. The 11-year search had concluded, but the investigation was beginning, and it immediately encountered new, even more disturbing mysteries. The autopsy results shocked even veteran detectives. Marcus Thompson's cause of death was severe head trauma caused by at least one devastating blow to the skull's rear with a heavy blunt instrument. The fracture was so extensive that survival was impossible. Sarah Chen had sustained damage to delicate neck bones, clear evidence of strangulation. They had been murdered. This wasn't simply a disappearance, but a vicious double homicide. However, the most critical and inexplicable fact emerged from the forensic entomologist and pathologist's report. After examining the remains' condition and residual insect activity, experts reached a conclusion that completely transformed the crime's understanding. Marcus and Sarah's bodies were not placed in sleeping bags and disposed of in the mine immediately following their deaths. They had been stored elsewhere for at least 24 hours and possibly as long as 48. This meant the killer or killers had not simply murdered them in a moment of rage somewhere in the forest. They went missing, then removed the bodies and concealed them somewhere for 1 or 2 days. Only afterward did they transport them to this abandoned mine, sew them into sleeping bags, and dispose of them. This fact eliminated all simple theories. This didn't resemble a chance encounter with a psychotic hermit. It indicated cold-blooded, carefully planned body disposal. Someone had invested considerable effort in concealing them. But why? And where had he hidden the bodies for an entire day? No violent signs were found on the bag's surfaces or the bodies themselves that could indicate transportation methods. The investigation, which seemed to have finally gained momentum, had actually reached a new, even darker, and more confusing dead end. Now police possessed the bodies and death causes. Still, the motive and killer's identity remained as elusive as they had been 11 years earlier. The discovery of Marcus and Sarah's bodies didn't close the case. It reopened it, but placed the investigation in an even more difficult position. The key mystery confronting detectives was the time frame itself. 24 or even 48 hours between the murders and body concealment. This fact indicated the killer was not merely a random psychopath who attacked a couple in the woods and panicked while hiding bodies in the nearest pit. This was someone who possessed a secure location to hide 2 bodies for up to 2 days. It could have been a basement, isolated garage, abandoned shed, or some other structure where no one would disturb him. This meant the perpetrator was most likely a local resident, or at least had regular access to property in the area. The theory of a visiting serial killer or random tourist became increasingly unlikely. Police began reconstructing the crime systematically. They compared 2 key locations, the spot where the car was discovered and the mine where the bodies were found. The distance between them was approximately 45 miles by road, part of which consisted of rough forest trails. To travel from one place to another, you would need an appropriate vehicle, most likely an SUV or pickup truck, and excellent area knowledge. The killer must have been aware of this particular long-abandoned mine, whose entrance was hidden from view. This represented another point supporting the local resident theory. Investigators excavated all archival data, They began checking property owners within a several dozen-mile radius from the mine. They studied lists of everyone with violent crime records who lived in the area in 2010. They checked hunters, former miners, forest workers, anyone who could know these woods intimately. It was tremendous work, but it produced no results. None of the people they investigated had an apparent motive or alibis for those days. Criminologists focused on evidence obtained from the mine. The sleeping bags and cord used to sew them became the investigation's primary focus. The bag fabric was ordinary nylon sold in thousands of stores nationwide. The cord was also of the most common variety. There were no unique fibers or manufacturing identifiers. Experts searched for DNA traces on them. After 11 years underground, the chances were minimal. They found a few unidentified fragments, but they were too deteriorated for identification. No fingerprints, no hair, nothing else that could point to the killer's identity. It was another dead end. The killer had either worn gloves or was simply extremely fortunate. With the new information, police resumed questioning witnesses. They returned to the service station attendant, tourists who had camped at nearby locations, and residents of small towns along the highway. But after 11 years, human memory proves an unreliable source. Nobody could remember anything additional. Police issued a new public appeal, this time with specific details. They asked anyone who had observed suspicious activity in the area where the mine was located in July 2010 to report it. Someone might have heard vehicle sounds at night or seen headlights in the forest where they shouldn't have been. There was a response, but all reports were either inaccurate or irrelevant. Now, investigators attempted to build a psychological profile of the killer. This was a man capable of extreme brutality, yet cold-blooded and calculating. He killed two people using different methods, one with brute force, the other quietly and personally through strangulation. This could indicate the killer was alone and that he first neutralized Marcus as a physical threat and then dealt with Sarah. He was strong enough to move two bodies independently. He was organized. Murder, storing the bodies, transporting them, hiding them. Every step required planning. The most crucial question, motive, remained unanswered. It wasn't robbery. All valuables were left in the car. Was it sexual assault? Due to the advanced decomposition state, the medical examiner was unable to provide a definitive answer. This terrible possibility remained hanging in the air. There was no evidence of personal revenge. Neither Marcus nor Sarah had any enemies or dark secrets, at least none that anyone was aware of. The most disturbing and most likely version remained. Marcus and Sarah were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. They accidentally encountered a predator who lived among ordinary people but led a double life. A man who knew the local woods intimately and used them as his hunting grounds. Perhaps he stopped them on the road under some pretext. Maybe they stopped to photograph the landscape and he approached them. What happened in the first minutes of their encounter will forever remain a mystery. But the end of this encounter was monstrous. He killed them, and then, instead of fleeing in panic, he calmly took the bodies to his home or another hiding place he knew. He kept them there for a day or two, perhaps just waiting for the right time to dispose of them permanently. The act of sewing the bodies into sleeping bags was the final touch in this concealment ritual. It was done not only to hide the bodies, but also to package them, to transform them into anonymous cargo. To this day, the murder of Marcus Thompson and Sarah Chen remains unsolved. It has gone cold again, but now the case file is marked double homicide. Investigators have the victims. They have an understanding of how they died and how they were disposed of, but they don't have a single lead that could point to the killer. The families received the remains of their loved ones, but they didn't get answers or justice. The killer, who kept his secret for 11 years, is most likely still out there. He could be someone's neighbor, co-worker, or just a regular resident of a small Arizona town. A man who one day, in July 2010, met a young couple on a forest road, took their lives, and then returned to his own as if nothing had happened. And the Arizona wilderness continues to guard its secrets.